What do you mean Ryan will be CEO? The words shot out of my mouth before I could stop them echoing through the newly renovated lobby I'd spent months perfecting. The polished stone floors, the reclaimed wood beams, the modern mountain-inspired lighting, it all bore my signature. Every inch of this space had been fought for, redesigned, rescued from the brink of failure. And now, in the span of a single breath, my parents were handing the entire operation to my brother. Mom didn't flinch. She waved a perfectly manicured hand, dismissive and casual, as if she were swatting a fly. "Claire, honey, your brother has more natural leadership ability," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You're just too detail-oriented. Too detail-oriented. As if that was a flaw. As if that didn't explain exactly how I'd resurrected this place from its slow, quiet death." Before I could respond, Ryan strutted in, hands in his pockets, hair slicked back, wearing that smug, lazy grin I'd known since childhood. "Hey, sis," he said, not even looking at me. "Don't take it personally. Someone's got to focus on the day-to-day stuff while I handle the bigger picture." The bigger picture. He couldn't even handle laundry until he was 25. "My name is Claire Anderson. I'm 52 years old. I've spent the last 20 years building a respected career in hotel management in Chicago. Worked my way up from front desk assistant to regional director of operations for a major chain. I've led renovation projects, coached managers, turned around underperforming properties. I've been awarded, published, respected, and yet here I was, completely invisible in my own family's legacy. 8 months ago, my father called me in tears. Tears. He said the Mountain Pine Lodge, the hotel my grandparents built with their bare hands in 1971, was weeks away from shutting down. "Claire," he'd choked, "we're drowning. We need help." I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. I sold my Chicago condo, cashed in my retirement savings, and left behind everything I'd built. I came home. The lodge was stuck in a time warp. Dated wallpaper from the 80s, an ancient reservation system that crashed weekly, and TripAdvisor reviews that made me cringe. I spent my first week in a crawl space fixing a broken pipe, my second revamping our online presence, and from then on, it was a marathon. Every morning before sunrise, I reviewed spreadsheets, balanced budgets, met with contractors. I negotiated new supplier deals, oversaw renovations, retrained staff on basic hospitality skills. I fought tooth and nail to bring us into the 21st century, and it worked. The Mountain Pine Lodge went from a 2-star musty throwback to a boutique destination. The upgraded spa farm-to-table menu, even our seasonal hiking packages, all were part of a carefully designed guest experience that boosted our bookings by 87%. 87%. And now, because Ryan had shown up to 2 staff meetings with a PowerPoint, he barely understood he was being rewarded. That night, they announced it at the staff meeting, the same meeting where I'd been scheduled to present our record-breaking quarterly numbers. My heart hammered as I watched employees, some of whom I'd known since I was a child, force polite claps. Sarah, our head housekeeper of 20 years, caught my eye from the corner. She didn't clap. She just shook her head slowly, her eyes filled with the same disbelief I felt. I stood there rooted, numb. Let me take you back. The Mountain Pine Lodge wasn't just a family business, it was our family identity. I grew up in these halls. While other kids played with dolls or rode bikes, I was helping Mom with check-ins, folding linens with Sarah, tagging along with Dad as he fixed a faulty boiler. The scent of pine and fresh sheets, the clatter of room keys, the quiet hum of lobby music, it was embedded in my bones. But Ryan, he was the golden child, 3 years younger, aimless, charming in that hollow way. He flitted between majors architecture, then philosophy, then business, before dropping out completely to find himself. And no matter how often he quit, failed, or vanished, my parents made excuses. He's creative. He just needs time. Ryan's got potential. He's just figuring things out. Meanwhile, I was breaking every glass ceiling I came across, sending postcards from industry conferences and hearing the same words from my mother every Thanksgiving. "That's nice, dear. But when are you coming home? When are you settling down?" Nothing I did was ever enough. When Dad called that day, desperate and ashamed, I saw it as a chance, not just to save the lodge, but maybe to finally earn their respect. The first 3 months were triage. I replaced the tattered carpeting, modernized the website, and installed a new digital booking system. I repainted the lobby in soothing neutrals, added mountain photography from local artists, and updated every guest room with eco-friendly fixtures. I created partnerships with nearby ski resorts and brought in social media influencers to give us buzz. I even got us featured in a winter travel issue of Mountain West Monthly. It worked. Our reviews skyrocketed, tour buses rerouted, and for the first time in years, we were turning a consistent profit. So when they named Ryan CEO, it wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. What made it worse, Ryan hadn't lifted a finger during the renovation. He claimed he was networking in Denver, but was mostly tagging himself at rooftop bars and EDM festivals. He'd show up every couple of weeks, toss out ideas like, we should get a VR tour, and disappear again. And still, my parents beamed at him. Once after a staff meeting where I unveiled our improved profit margin, my mom turned to Ryan and said, "See, your energy must be rubbing off." I could have screamed, but I didn't. I just kept working, hoping it would be enough. It wasn't, and nothing drove that point home more than standing in that staff meeting, watching him shake hands with employees I had trained, hugging guests I had recruited while I stood off to the side invisible. Afterward, I locked myself in the staff break room, gripping the counter to keep from crying. The cheap fluorescent light buzzed overhead, and I could hear laughter through the walls, Ryan's voice booming over champagne. My hands shook, my breath caught. Then something shifted, like a thread finally snapping. That night, driving home, I passed the old Riverside Lodge, once our biggest competitor. It had been shut down the previous winter. As I drove by, something caught my eye, a for sale sign. I slammed on the brakes. The windows were boarded and the gravel lot was overgrown, but the view was spectacular. Closer to the slopes, more private. It had potential. And in that moment, a different fire lit in me. Maybe I didn't need to keep begging them to see me. Maybe it was time they saw what happened when they didn't. I pulled out my phone, took a photo of the sign, and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. "Hi, Karen, it's Claire Anderson. I need you to set up a property viewing tomorrow morning." First thing, I barely slept that night. My mind buzzed with ideas. Floor plans, branding concepts, staffing logistics. I sketched rough designs in the margins of an old receipt, my laptop open, beside me tabs pulled up for interior designers, eco-friendly construction options, and boutique spa contractors. The more I thought about it, the more the vision sharpened, not just another lodge, but a sanctuary, a statement. By morning, I'd already lined up financing. Between my spotless credit remaining savings and a few favors from old colleagues in Chicago, I could make this happen. When I stepped onto the Riverside Lodge property the next day, I didn't see the peeling paint or cracked stonework. I saw potential. I saw freedom. The place was a mess, sure, a faded skeleton of its former glory, but the bones were solid. And the views, God, the views were breathtaking. Towering evergreens, panoramic snow-capped peaks, and quiet that felt sacred. It was perfect. The realtor was skeptical. "Claire, are you sure about this? It's going to take a lot of work to turn this around." I smiled. That's what they said about Mountain Pine Lodge. Look at it now. What I didn't say was that Mountain Pine was no longer mine. Over the next few weeks, I moved fast. I brought in contractors from Denver, quietly hired a design consultant I'd worked with years ago, sourced furnishings from reclaimed wood artisans. Every choice was deliberate. Every detail told a story, and I didn't breathe a word of it to my family. Back at Mountain Pine, Ryan was flailing. I heard from Sarah, who texted me updates almost daily, that he'd scrapped our popular breakfast service to save money. Guests were furious. Reviews dipped. His modern scheduling system had 3 staff quitting within a week, including Maria, one of our best housekeepers. When he fired our longest-serving concierge for not being flexible, I knew the cracks were becoming chasms. Meanwhile, I worked 14-hour days at Riverside. I hired a pastry chef from Breckenridge, commissioned local artists for custom pieces, rewired the entire building for energy efficiency. I knew exactly what I wanted, and for the first time, no one questioned me. No one called me too focused or told me to let Ryan handle the vision. This time, I was the vision. I named it the Summit. Yes, it was a bit literal, but I liked the clarity. I wanted the name to feel ambitious, elevated, like a peak you climb to because you earned it. News started spreading quickly in town. Some called me petty, said I was trying to destroy my family. Why compete with your own brother, I heard someone whisper at the grocery store. But others quietly rooted for me. Former staff from Mountain Pine reached out asking if I was hiring. Vendors who'd worked with me for years said they missed my professionalism. Even old guests emailed to say they were excited to see what I was creating. My parents, of course, were furious. They invited me to dinner one night, something we hadn't done in months, and the tension was thick before the salad hit the table. How could you do this to your brother? Mom asked, her voice tremulous but controlled. To us, I sipped my wine and said nothing. Let her fill the silence. Dad looked tired, older. Like the stress of Mountain Pine was starting to show in his hunched shoulders and deepening frown lines. But neither of them acknowledged why their son was failing. Only that I was betraying them by succeeding. That was the real issue, wasn't it? Not that I'd left, but that I was doing better without them. By the 4th month, Mountain Pine was in visible decline. Sarah quit. So did the sous chef. Guests complained online about peeling wallpaper, missed check-in times, and poor service. Rates were slashed just to stay competitive. And then, finally, I opened the doors to the Summit. We launched with a grand opening party that drew every travel blogger, local journalist, and luxury resort critic within 200 miles. The event space was candlelit and gorgeous. The hors d'oeuvres were curated by a James Beard finalist chef. Guests sipped champagne in the rooftop garden and marveled at the views. And of course, my family showed up. They didn't RSVP. They weren't invited. But there they were. Mom in her best pearls, Dad in his dusty sports coat, and Ryan smirking in the corner, nursing a whiskey and scanning the room like he was still in control. He cornered me near the bar. "You're trying to destroy us." He hissed, his voice low and venomous. "This is a direct attack on our family." I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. "No, Ryan," I said with the calm that only comes from clarity. "This is me succeeding despite our family." He blinked, but I was already walking away. The local paper ran a feature the next morning, Aspen's new gem. The Summit shines in grand debut. And just beneath that, a smaller column mountain. Pine Lodge, faces management, shake-up amid staff exodus. I clipped both and pinned them side by side in my office. The following weeks were a blur of excellence. The Summit was everything I'd dreamed of. From the organic linens to the heated towel racks, from the gourmet farm-to-table brunch to the Mountain View yoga classes, it was mine. Every inch, every cent, every smile from a guest walking through the doors, and people noticed. Luxury blogs wrote glowing reviews. A Denver-based influencer named us Colorado's hidden winter sanctuary. Even Condé Nast travelers sent someone out to tour the property. Meanwhile, Ryan was barely hanging on. But that wasn't my problem anymore. The first act of sabotage wasn't subtle. 3 of my vendors' longtime partners from my Chicago days pulled out of contracts within the same week. No warning, no explanation. Just polite apologies and references to conflicts of interest. At first I was confused. Then Sarah, now my front office manager, gave me a look over her latte and said flatly, "Your mom's been making calls." Of course. It wasn't enough that I'd built the Summit from the ground up. It wasn't enough that I'd quietly drawn guests' talent and attention without throwing dirt. No. In my mother's world, success outside the family wasn't real success. It was betrayal. The message was clear: if I wouldn't hand my work back to Ryan, they'd make it harder for me to succeed. And it didn't stop with the vendors. Old family friends began ghosting me. The casual coffee dates I used to have with folks from town, tourism board members, boutique owners, even the pastor's wife suddenly stopped. I got dropped from the local hospitality council. A friendly message came in from the Chamber of Commerce. Concerns have been raised about divided loyalties, because I'd chosen independence. But I didn't crumble. When local vendors backed out, I cast a wider net. Denver suppliers stepped up, more expensive, sure, but twice as professional. When the tourism board distanced itself, I doubled down on SEO and guest partnerships. I launched a referral program with ski instructors, curated an Instagram campaign featuring pet-friendly suites, and within weeks our direct bookings spiked. If anything, their resistance made me sharper, tougher, more exacting. But it still stung, especially the whispers. People said I was vindictive, that I was tearing the family apart over a title. One woman even cornered me after yoga and asked if it was worth losing everyone just to prove a point. I wanted to scream or cry or both, but instead I smiled and said, it was never about proving a point. It was about being free to do what I know I'm capable of. Then came the knock on my office door. It was early, barely 8:00 a.m., and I was reviewing Q2 projections with Sarah when I heard it. A familiar rhythm. Hesitant, rhythmic. I opened the door to find my parents. Their eyes were hollow, their posture defensive. They looked like people used to being in charge who were now barely holding on. "Can we come in?" Dad asked. His voice was softer than I'd heard in years. I nodded. They sat across from me in the guest chairs. The office was still a contrast to the hum of activity outside, where staff bustled through morning check-ins and coffee orders. "We need your help," Mom said finally. Her eyes shimmered, but not from tears, from discomfort. Dad continued, "The bank is getting ready to call our loan. Ryan, he's struggling more than we thought. More than they thought, maybe. I'd seen it coming since day one. He needs guidance," Mom added quickly. "You could come back, show him the ropes. We're still a family, Claire. We can fix this." There it was, the desperation, the silent admission they'd chosen wrong. But they still didn't say it. Still no apology. Still no recognition that I'd been the one who held it all together. I leaned back in my chair, let the silence stretch, let them feel it. Then I said quietly, "I offered to help. 8 months ago. They looked away. I sold my home. I gave up a stable job. I poured everything I had into saving Mountain Pine. And you made a choice. You gave the leadership to someone who couldn't tell a front desk float sheet from a breakfast menu." Mom opened her mouth, but I raised my hand. "I'll offer advice," I said. "I'll recommend software vendors, maybe even some retraining options. But I'm not stepping back into a fire I didn't light. Ryan made this mess. You let him. It's yours to fix now." Dad swallowed hard. I understand, but he didn't. Not really. They stood slowly, defeated. As they turned to leave, Mom paused and looked at me with something that could have been regret, or maybe resentment. "You're very good at building things," she said, "but you're not so good at forgiveness." I didn't flinch. "And you're very good at dismissing people," I replied. "But you're not so good at accountability." They didn't respond, just left. And as the door clicked shut behind them, a strange feeling settled over me. It wasn't triumph. It was peace. Over the next week, something inside me shifted. I stopped explaining myself, to clients, to vendors, even to friends who asked why I was still so distant from my family. I let go of the guilt, the constant self-editing, the compulsive need to defend my decisions. If someone didn't see my worth, that was on them now, not me. Sarah noticed it first. "You're walking different," she joked one morning. I bought new boots, I deflected. But she was right. I was walking taller, straighter, unburdened. That's when the email came in. Subject line, "Boutique, Hotel of the Year, Finalist Notification." I stared at it for a full minute, heart pounding. We'd been nominated, not just in the local circuit, but by the Colorado Regional Hospitality Association, the biggest name in the state. I clicked through. Our name was there, clear as day. The Summit, Aspen CO, and right below it, nothing. No Mountain Pine Lodge, no Ryan, just us. The ballroom shimmered under the glow of crystal chandeliers, each table draped in deep navy linen and lined with silver cutlery. I stood near the back trying to steady my breath, the nomination email still echoing in my mind like a distant thunderclap. I had told myself it didn't matter, that I didn't need awards or applause. But as I looked around at the industry leaders, the magazine editors, the seasoned hospitality execs, I realized something had shifted in me. I wanted this, not for revenge, not for validation, but because it mattered that the work was seen, that what we had built, I had built, was undeniable. Sarah stood beside me, beaming in a midnight blue dress that matched the tablecloths. Our pastry chef, Lynn, waved from across the room. The summit's core team had come out in full force tonight, elegant, proud, glowing. My people, my family. As we took our seats near the center of the room, I scanned the audience. My gaze halted on two familiar silhouettes at the edge of the ballroom, my parents. They hadn't told me they were coming, but of course they were here. The awards were public. Anyone could attend. Dad looked older than I remembered, more stooped, grayer at the temples. Mom sat beside him, spine-stiff eyes scanning the stage. There was a time I would have cared what they thought, ached for it. But tonight I didn't feel small beneath their gaze. I felt whole. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers. Tonight we honor excellence in regional hospitality. These are the innovators, the visionaries, the ones who remind us why service is not just a job, it's an art. One by one, awards were handed out. Best Historic Renovation, Best Sustainable Lodge, Best New Chef. Then came our category. My heart skipped. The finalists for Best Boutique Hotel of the Year are... A hush fell over the crowd. The screen flashed, the Willow Ridge Inn, Telluride Eagle Crest Escape, Boulder the Summit. Aspen applause rippled through the room. And the winner is... The announcer paused for dramatic effect. The Summit. The room erupted. Cheers, applause. My team shot to their feet. Lynn let out a squeal. Sarah grabbed my hand and whispered, "This is yours. Go." I stood legs trembling, not from nerves, but from the weight of everything leading to this moment. As I made my way to the stage, 1,000 memories played behind my eyes, hauling boxes into the Riverside property, staring down my first construction invoice, crying in my car after Mom told me I was too emotional to lead. And then I looked out across the sea of faces, my staff, my guests, my peers, and beyond them, my parents. Mom's lips were pressed into a tight line, her eyes glassy. Dad stared down at the table, his hands clasped too tightly. Ryan was nowhere in sight. I took the mic, heart pounding. "Thank you," I began, voice steady. "This award is more than just a plaque on a wall. It represents late nights, early mornings, broken plumbing, frozen pipes, and about 50 gallons of coffee." Laughter bubbled through the room. It represents belief first in the vision, then in the process, and finally, in myself. I let the words hang there for a moment. When I came back to Colorado, I didn't think I'd be starting over. But as it turns out, starting over can be the greatest gift. Because when no one believes in you, you stop waiting for permission. You build without apology. And you learn just how far you're willing to go to protect what matters. There was a pause, a quiet, respectful silence, then applause deep and warm. As I stepped off the stage, a hand touched my arm. A woman with cropped silver hair and sharp eyes, Margot Delaney, senior editor at Mountain Lux magazine. "That was one hell of a speech," she said, handing me a business card. "We'd love to feature the summit in our upcoming winter issue. Full spread. And maybe... Your story?" I blinked. My story. She nodded. What it took to build something from scratch, especially when no one thought you could. I didn't say yes right away, but I knew I would. As Margot turned to leave, I caught my parents lingering by the exit, close enough to hear, far enough not to interrupt. I tilted my head ever so slightly. Let them see me, really see me. And then I turned away. The feature came out 2 weeks later. A 10-page spread, glossy photos, a quote pulled from my interview in bold across the center page. Sometimes the best success stories start when you're underestimated. And on the opposite page, an article titled Legacy Lodges at Risk. Why Mountain Pines Decline Reflects a Larger Trend. I didn't gloat. I didn't send them the issue. But word spread fast in our small town. It had been 3 weeks since the summit took home the award, since the magazine feature went viral in our region's hospitality circles, since bookings tripled and I started getting consulting requests from hoteliers as far as Idaho. I was standing by the fireplace in our lounge watching a couple sip cocoa near the panoramic windows when Sarah tapped gently on my arm. "There's someone in your office," she said quietly. "Your parents." I didn't roll my eyes. I didn't sigh, but something inside me braced. When I walked in, they were already seated. Mom had a folder in her lap. Dad was nursing a coffee, staring into the steam. Claire Mom began smiling like we were old friends. We wanted to talk again. I nodded slowly, settling into the chair across from them. She continued. "The bank has tightened its terms again. Mountain Pines occupancy dropped another 12% last month. Ryan's not adjusting well. We need help." There it was again. Need. Not we were wrong. Not you were right. Just help us now because we finally see the mess. I waited. Dad looked up, then finally speaking. "The staff misses your leadership, the systems you implemented. You understand this industry. We were hoping—" He trailed off, then cleared his throat. "We were hoping you'd reconsider. Come back. Maybe Coach Ryan." It was almost laughable. Coach Ryan. The same Ryan who'd once mocked my guest recovery script as corporate nonsense, who fired loyal staff to make room for his vision. The same brother who smirked when I was pushed aside. I stared at them both, letting the silence grow until it pressed in on all of us. Then I said quietly, "Do you remember what you told me in the lobby that day?" Mom blinked. "Claire." "You said I was too detail-oriented," I continued, my voice calm. "You said Ryan was a natural leader." Her lips parted, but I held up a hand. "You made that call. You chose him. Over me. Even when I had the experience, the track record, the plan. You chose him because he fit your idea of leadership better." Dad sighed. "Claire." And now I said, leaning forward, "You're asking the woman you once dismissed as too focused to bail you out." The air turned sharp. Still. I stood slowly. "I won't come back. I won't coach Ryan. But I'll do what you didn't do for me. I'll give you tools. I'll send my operational guides, recommend a consultant, share my vendor list, but I won't be your solution." Their faces dropped. Mom's eyes narrowed. "So that's it," she said, voice trembling. "You're just going to watch us sink." I tilted my head. "I watched you let me drown first. That stopped her cold, and I didn't flinch." They left without another word. As I watched them drive away from my office window, the thumbnail quote echoed in my mind. "You're too detail-oriented, Claire. Ryan's a natural leader. Funny how that sentence used to haunt me. Now it empowered me." The days that followed were some of the most freeing I've ever lived. Without the weight of trying to fix my family's choices, I had room to expand. I accepted a consulting offer from a small eco-lodge in Montana, booked a podcast interview, launched a mini online course on sustainable boutique hospitality. The summit hit its highest occupancy rate ever that month. Meanwhile, Mountain Pine's Yelp rating dropped below 3.5 stars. But the real shift, I no longer cared. Some folks in town still whispered. She built her success on her family's failure. I heard it in the grocery store, at the post office, even at a wine tasting event. But others, they started approaching me with soft, brave smiles. "I followed what you did, opened my own bakery. You gave me the push I needed to apply for that grant. I left my corporate job. Finally." Apparently, standing up for yourself has ripple effects. The best part, my staff. Every morning I walked into the summit to a chorus of good mornings, the scent of fresh cinnamon rolls, and the hum of quiet excellence. We weren't perfect, but we were proud, and we were thriving. Sarah joked once that I ran the place like a general, only with prettier shoes, she added, and for the first time I laughed and didn't deflect the praise. The first snowfall came early that year. I stood by the summit's floor-to-ceiling windows, a mug of spiced chai in hand, watching thick, soft flakes drift down over the evergreens. The lodge was quiet early enough that guests were still curled in their beds, wrapped in downy warmth and mountain dreams. This was my favorite time of day, before the emails started pinging, before the lobby filled with laughter and ski boots. Just silence, just breath, just being. I looked around. The stone fireplace flickering with soft light, the reclaimed wood beams I'd fought to preserve, the mountain art curated from local women artists. Everything was mine. Every decision, every risk, every sleepless night that led to this moment. And I realized something. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at Ryan, not even at my parents, because I no longer needed their understanding to validate what I'd built. After the regional awards, I'd been invited to speak at a women's leadership summit in Denver. The theme was Reclaiming Legacy. I almost didn't go. Public speaking wasn't my thing. I wasn't one for microphones or spotlighted stages. But something in me knew it was time. The room was packed college students, business owners, aspiring entrepreneurs. I wore a slate gray dress, stood at the podium, and told them the truth. I spent most of my life waiting for permission, I said, waiting for someone to say I was ready or capable or worthy, until one day I realized the only validation that mattered was my own. A pause. And sometimes, when your family doesn't see your worth, it's not a flaw in you, it's a blind spot in them. Afterward, I was flooded with hugs, tears, handshakes, quiet confessions. One woman whispered, "My dad still calls my business your little project. But hearing you, I think I'm ready to stop asking him to see it." I nodded. Good. Build it anyway. Back in Aspen, the summit became more than a hotel. It became a hub. We hosted local art exhibits, free workshops for hospitality students, and fundraisers for the mountain rescue team. We even launched a paid internship program for rural Colorado teens interested in the industry. Guests came not just for luxury, but for connection. Families returned year after year. Solo travelers made friends in our fireside lounge. Couples got engaged on our scenic overlook. It was everything I'd once hoped Mountain Pine could be, and more. As for Ryan, we hadn't spoken since that last visit in my office. Rumor had it he moved back to Denver, tried to start a travel podcast. I never looked it up. I didn't need to. Mom and Dad. They still ran Mountain Pine, but from a distance. I heard they'd hired a professional general manager, a woman from Vail with 20 years' experience. Funny how it took me leaving for them to finally respect expertise. We spoke occasionally. Small talk, holiday greetings, nothing deep, nothing warm, and that was okay. I'd made peace with the fact that we weren't going to be the family I once longed for, but I had a new one now. One night, we hosted a staff appreciation dinner at the summit. The dining room was decked out in fairy lights, long farm tables lined with pine garlands and candles. Laughter filled the air. Sarah stood and raised a glass. To Claire, she said, "For believing in excellence, for never backing down, and for proving that being too detail-oriented might just be the superpower we all needed." Everyone cheered. I blinked fast to fight the tears. Later that night, after guests left and the snow started falling again, I walked the halls alone. Past the spa, the reading nook, the guest library with hand-picked classics. I paused at the glass doors that led to the overlook. Stepping out, I breathed in the cold, crisp air. The stars stretched overhead like tiny lanterns. I thought of the girl I once was, the young woman desperate for approval, the daughter buried under expectations, the sister eclipsed by charm. She would have stood here tonight in disbelief. But me, I stood in peace. This wasn't revenge. It was revelation. A life built not in defiance of what I'd lost, but in celebration of what I'd become. And as I stood there, wine brushing my cheeks, lights from the lodge glowing behind me, I smiled. because I had reached the summit. If you've ever been told you were too much, too focused, too intense, too ambitious, build it anyway. You don't need permission to rise. You don't need approval to thrive. You just need the courage to keep climbing. Thank you for watching. Have you ever been overlooked by your own family? Share your story below. Your voice matters. Like this story, tap the like button. Don't forget to subscribe for more real stories of transformation, betrayal, and triumph.